The girl had made a blanket from horse feed sacks. The rancher saw her feet first, then her tears. Welcome back to our storytelling family. Before we dive into today's emotional journey through the untamed American West, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Your support means the world to us. And please, drop a comment telling us what corner of the globe you're listening from. We love connecting with our amazing international audience. Now prepare yourself for a story of unexpected kindness, resilience, and hope. The October morning air carried the crisp bite of approaching winter across the Wyoming Territory. Tom Brennan, pulled his coat collar higher as he rode his stallion, Thunder, along the fence line of his sprawling ranch. At 42, Tom had spent the better part of 2 decades building his cattle operation from nothing, and these routine inspections were as much a part of his day as breathing. The Double B Ranch stretched across 15,000 acres of some of the finest grazing land in the territory. Tom employed 12 hands during peak season, and his herds were known throughout the region for their quality. He was a successful man by any measure, though success had come at a price. He lived alone in a house built for a family he'd never had, surrounded by the vast emptiness of the frontier. As Thunder picked his way carefully down a rocky slope toward the creek that marked his eastern boundary, Tom spotted something that didn't belong. There, tucked beneath an overhang of red sandstone, was what appeared to be a makeshift shelter. His first thought was drifters, the kind of wandering men who sometimes sought temporary refuge on ranch property without permission. Tom's hand moved instinctively to the rifle in his saddle scabbard, but as he drew closer, details emerged that made him pause. The shelter was too small for grown men, constructed from branches and what looked like pieces of burlap sacking. And there was something else, a faint wisp of smoke rising from what must be a carefully concealed fire. Dismounting quietly, Tom approached on foot, his boots making soft sounds on the sandy ground. As he rounded a large boulder, he got his first clear view of the camp, and what he saw stopped him cold. A pair of small, bare feet protruded from beneath a makeshift blanket. The feet were dirty, scratched and blue with cold. They belonged to someone young, a child, by the size of them. The blanket covering the small form was clearly homemade, stitched together from horse feed sacks with letters and brand names still visible across its surface. Tom's throat tightened as he took in the scene. Someone, a child, was sleeping rough on his land, with nothing but feed sacks for warmth. His mind raced through possibilities. Orphaned travelers, a family that had lost everything and was moving west, or worse, a child abandoned and left to fend for herself. The sound of his approach must have wakened the sleeper, because the makeshift blanket began to move. A head emerged slowly, revealing the face of a girl who couldn't be more than 12 or 13 years old. Her hair was dark brown, tangled and dirty, framing a face that was far too thin. But it was her eyes that hit Tom like a physical blow. Large, dark eyes that held a wariness no child should possess. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. The girl's gaze darted between Tom's face and the rifle at his side, clearly calculating whether to run or try to talk her way out of trouble. Tom could see her muscles tensing, ready to bolt. "Easy there, miss," Tom said softly, the same tone he used with spooked horses. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl didn't relax, but she didn't run either. Instead, she clutched the feed sack blanket more tightly around her shoulders and watched him with those enormous eyes. This is my land," Tom continued gently, "but you're not in trouble. I just want to make sure you're all right." That's when he saw them, tears beginning to well up in the girl's eyes, though she fought them back with a determination that broke Tom's heart. She was trying so hard to be brave, but she was clearly terrified. "I'm sorry, mister," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I shouldn't be here. I was just so cold, and this seemed like a good place to rest for the night." Tom crouched down to bring himself closer to her eye level, noting how she flinched slightly at his movement. "What's your name, honey?" "Emma," she replied after a moment's hesitation. "Emma Clark." "Well, Emma Clark, I'm Tom Brennan, and this is my ranch. Can you tell me how you came to be camping here all by yourself?" Emma's lower lip trembled, and despite her obvious efforts to remain composed, A tear escaped and rolled down her dirty cheek. "I got separated from my family's wagon train 3 days ago. I've been trying to catch up, but I think they're too far ahead now." Tom's heart clenched. Wagon trains moved fast, and a child on foot would have no hope of catching up, especially not with winter coming on. Where was your train headed?" "Oregon Territory. Pa said we were going to start a farm there." Emma's voice broke slightly on the word pa, and more tears began to fall, despite her efforts to stop them. "How did you get separated?" Tom asked gently. Emma looked down at her hands, clearly ashamed. "We stopped to rest near a river, and I went to pick berries I saw growing nearby. I guess I went further than I thought, and when I came back, they were gone. I've been walking for days, but I haven't seen any sign of them." Tom felt anger rising in his chest, not at Emma, but at adults who would leave a child behind. Even frontier families, who understood the harsh realities of travel better than most, typically had systems in place to prevent such disasters. "Did you tell anyone where you were going when you left to pick berries?" Emma shook her head miserably. "Ma was nursing my baby sister, and Pa was fixing a broken wheel. Everyone was busy. I thought I'd just be gone for a few minutes." The picture was becoming clearer. A family distracted by the immediate demands of travel, a curious child who wandered further than intended, and the terrible realization that came too late. Tom had heard similar stories before, though usually they ended in tragedy. "Emma," Tom said carefully, "have you eaten anything in the past day or two?" The girl's stomach chose that moment to emit a loud rumble, answering his question. She blushed and looked even more embarrassed. "I found some wild onions yesterday, and there was a stream where I could drink water." Tom stood slowly, his mind already working through what needed to be done. This child was clearly undernourished, inadequately clothed for the approaching winter, and completely alone in some of the harshest country in America. There was really only one choice to make. "Emma, I want you to come back to my house with me. We'll get you fed, warmed up, and figure out what to do about finding your family." Panic flashed across Emma's face. "I can't abandon my camp. What if they come back looking for me?" Tom's heart ached at the hope in her voice, but he knew the reality. A wagon train that had been traveling for 3 days wouldn't turn back. They couldn't afford to. The approaching winter made delay potentially fatal for everyone. "We'll leave markers here," Tom said gently, "signs that will tell anyone who comes looking exactly where you've gone. But Emma, honey, you can't survive out here alone, especially not with winter coming." Emma looked around her pathetic little camp, the pile of rocks she'd arranged as a fire ring, the branches she'd woven together for windbreak, the precious feed sack blanket that represented her only protection against the cold. Tom could see her weighing her options, and he held his breath, hoping she would trust him. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Okay," she whispered. But just until we figure out how to find my family." "Just until then," Tom agreed, though privately he suspected that reunion might be impossible. As Emma gathered her few possessions, which consisted entirely of the feed sack blanket and a small cloth bundle containing what looked like a few berries and a cracked tin cup, Tom found himself wondering how this chance encounter was going to change his carefully ordered life. The ride back to the main house gave Tom time to study Emma more closely. She sat in front of him, on Thunder's saddle, her small body rigid with tension despite his efforts to reassure her. The feed sack blanket was wrapped tightly around her shoulders, and Tom could feel her shivering in the cool morning air. "That's quite a blanket you made there," Tom said, hoping to draw her into conversation. "Did you stitch it yourself?" Emma nodded, not turning around. "Ma taught me to sew. When I couldn't find the wagon train, I remembered seeing those old feed sacks scattered around where we'd camped. I figured they'd be warmer than nothing." Tom marveled at her resourcefulness. Most children her age would have panicked and died of exposure within the first night. Emma had not only survived 3 days alone, but had improvised shelter and warmth from discarded materials. "Your ma taught you well," Tom said. That was smart thinking. As they crested the hill that overlooked his ranch, Emma gasped softly. The double B's spread out below them like a small town. The main house, bunkhouse, barn, corrals, and various outbuildings arranged around a central yard. Smoke rose from several chimneys, and Tom could see his hands going about their morning chores. "You live here?" Emma asked, her voice filled with wonder. I do. Built most of it myself over the years. Tom felt a familiar surge of pride as he looked at his life's work. It's a good place, safe. The main house was a two-story structure built from local stone and timber, with a wide front porch and real glass windows, luxuries on the frontier. Tom had designed it with the hope that someday he'd have a family to fill it. But as the years passed, and that dream seemed increasingly unlikely, it had become a monument to his solitude. As they approached the house, several of Tom's ranch hands looked up from their work. Cookie, the grizzled old cook who ran the bunkhouse kitchen, emerged from the cookhouse with a questioning look on his weathered face. "Boss?" Cookie called out. "Everything all right?" "Everything's fine, Cookie," Tom replied, dismounting and then carefully helping Emma down from the saddle. "This is Miss Emma Clark. She's going to be staying with us for a while." Emma pressed closer to Tom's side, clearly intimidated by the curious stares of the cowboys. Tom placed a protective hand on her shoulder, feeling how thin she was even through the feed sack blanket. "Cookie, think you could rustle up some breakfast for Miss Emma here? She's had a hard few days." Cookie's expression immediately softened as he took in Emma's appearance. The tangled hair, the too thin face, the improvised blanket. "Course I can, boss. Got flapjacks on the griddle right now, and there's bacon and eggs aplenty." Tom guided Emma up the front steps of the house, noting how she kept looking back over her shoulder, as if expecting her family's wagon to materialize at any moment. The hope in her eyes was heartbreaking. Inside, the house was warm and comfortable, furnished with handmade furniture that reflected both Tom's practical nature and his unexpected eye for craftsmanship. A fire crackled in the large stone fireplace, and morning light streamed through clean windows. "First things first," Tom said gently. "Let's get you cleaned up and into some proper clothes. There's a washroom just through that door, and I think I might have something that'll fit you better than that blanket." Emma clutched her feed sack, covering more tightly. "This blanket is all I have left," she said quietly. "It's the only thing that connects me to—" She didn't finish the sentence, but Tom understood. The blanket wasn't just warmth. It was hope, proof that she could survive, a tangible link to her resourcefulness during the worst days of her life. "Of course you can keep it," Tom said quickly. "I just thought you might like to have some regular clothes too, for warmth." While Emma washed in the small room off the kitchen, Tom rummaged through a trunk in one of the spare bedrooms. Years ago, his sister had visited with her family, and she'd left behind some of her daughter's outgrown dresses. Tom had never bothered to dispose of them, and now he was grateful for his pack-rat tendencies. He found a simple blue dress that looked like it might fit Emma, along with a woolen shawl and some undergarments. Everything was clean and well-made, far better than what the girl was currently wearing. When Emma emerged from the washroom, her face and hands clean for the first time in days, Tom was struck by how pretty she was underneath the grime. Her dark hair, though still tangled, had a healthy shine when clean, and her eyes seemed larger and more expressive. "These were my nieces," Tom explained, setting the clothes on a chair. "She outgrew them a few years back. They should fit you better than what you're wearing." Emma touched the blue fabric reverently. "They're beautiful. But what if my family comes back and I'm wearing different clothes? What if they don't recognize me?" Tom's heart ached at the question. "Emma, honey, your family would recognize you if you were wearing a potato sack. Parents know their children no matter what." While Emma changed clothes, Tom went to the kitchen and started preparing a more substantial meal than Cookie's usual cowboy fare. He found eggs, milk, bread, and butter, simple ingredients that would be gentle on a stomach that had been empty too long. When Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing the blue dress, Tom barely recognized her. Clean, properly clothed, and with her hair somewhat tamed, she looked like any other well-cared-for child from a respectable frontier family. "Sit down right here," Tom said, pulling out a chair at the kitchen table. "Let's get some food in you." As Emma ate, slowly at first, then with increasing appetite, Tom found himself studying her mannerisms. She had clearly been raised with good manners. She waited for him to sit before starting to eat, said please and thank you without prompting, and ate neatly despite her obvious hunger. "Tell me about your family," Tom said gently. "Your parents, your sister." Emma's face lit up when she talked about her family. "Pa's name is William, but everyone calls him Bill. He's tall and strong, and he knows everything about farming. Ma is Sarah, and she's the prettiest lady in the whole world. She can cook anything and make it taste good. And my baby sister is called Ruth. She's only 8 months old, but she already laughs all the time. Sounds like a wonderful family, Tom said, meaning it. They must be worried sick about you. Emma's expression darkened. Do you think they're looking for me, or do you think they kept going? It was the question Tom had been dreading. The honest answer was that wagon trains couldn't afford delays, especially this late in the season. Every day of travel was crucial for reaching Oregon before winter made the mountain passes impassable. But looking at Emma's hopeful face, he couldn't bring himself to crush her completely. I'm sure they're doing everything they can to find you, he said carefully. But Emma, we need to be prepared for the possibility that they might have had to keep moving. Wagon trains have schedules they have to keep. Emma set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone. You mean they might have left me behind on purpose? Not on purpose, Tom said quickly. Never on purpose. But sometimes on the frontier, people have to make impossible choices. Your parents might have decided that the best way to help you was to get to Oregon and then send help back to look for you. It was a kinder interpretation than Tom actually believed, but he couldn't bear to tell this child that her family had probably written her off as lost and continued their journey westward. So, what do I do now? Emma asked, her voice small and lost. Tom reached across the table and covered her small hand with his large, calloused one. For now, you stay here where it's safe and warm. I'll send word to the towns along the usual wagon train routes. Let people know you're here in case your family comes looking. And when spring comes, if we haven't heard anything, we'll figure out what to do then. Emma nodded slowly, though Tom could see she was fighting back tears again. Thank you, Mr. Brennan. I don't have any way to pay you back. You don't need to pay me back, Tom said firmly. Sometimes people help each other just because it's the right thing to do. As Emma finished her breakfast, Tom found himself making mental adjustments to his routine. He'd need to set up one of the spare bedrooms properly, make sure there were suitable clothes and supplies for a young girl, and figure out how to keep her occupied and educated during the long winter months ahead. Looking at Emma as she carefully folded her precious feed sack blanket, Tom realized his quiet, orderly life was about to become much more complicated. But as he watched her tentative smile when she thanked him for the meal, he found he didn't mind the complications nearly as much as he'd expected. Emma's first week at the Double B Ranch passed in a careful dance of adjustment on both sides. Tom found himself modifying routines he'd followed for years, while Emma struggled to find her place in a world so different from the cramped wagon where she'd spent months traveling with her family. The spare bedroom Tom had prepared for her was larger than the entire space her family had occupied in their covered wagon. Emma spent her first night lying awake, overwhelmed by the silence. She was accustomed to the constant creaking of wagon wheels, the snorting of oxen, and the murmur of other families settling down for sleep around the campfire. The ranch house's quiet felt almost oppressive. On her third morning, Tom found Emma sitting on the front porch steps, staring eastward toward the horizon, where her family's wagon train had disappeared. See anything interesting out there? Tom asked gently, settling down beside her. Just looking, Emma replied. And in case they come back. Tom understood that this vigil was important to her, even if it was likely futile. Emma, would you like to help me with some of the ranch work? Might make the time pass easier. Emma turned to look at him, interest flickering in her dark eyes. What kind of work? Well, I've got horses that need grooming, chickens that need feeding, and Cookie's been complaining that he needs help organizing the supply shed. Course, if you'd rather just sit here. No, Emma said quickly. I mean, yes, I'd like to help. Ma always said idle hands were the devil's playground. Tom smiled. Your ma sounds like a wise woman. Emma's first job was helping Cookie inventory the ranch's food supplies in preparation for winter. The old cook was initially skeptical about having a young girl underfoot in his domain, but Emma's quick mind and willingness to work soon won him over. "Your girl's got sense," Cookie told Tom that evening. "Knows how to count proper, reads better than half the hands, and ain't afraid of hard work. Where'd you say you found her?" "She found me," Tom replied, which was true enough. As the days passed, Emma began to show her true character. She had a quick intelligence that absorbed everything around her, and a natural empathy that drew even the roughest cowboys to treat her with gentle respect. She learned the names of all the horses, helped Tom repair a section of damaged fence, and even convinced him to let her try her hand at cooking a meal. The cooking experiment was less successful than her other endeavors. Emma had learned the basics from her mother, but cooking for a family of 4 was different from preparing a meal for a ranch full of hungry cowboys. Her first attempt at biscuits came out hard enough to use as ammunition, and her gravy was so thick it could have been used to repair roof shingles. "Well," Tom said diplomatically, sawing at one of the biscuits with his knife, "they've got character." Emma burst into tears, the first time she'd cried since that first morning Tom found her. "I can't do anything right. Ma could cook for 20 people and make it look easy, and I can't even make decent biscuits." Tom set down his knife and pulled Emma into an awkward hug. He wasn't used to comforting crying children, but something about Emma's distress moved him deeply. "Emma, honey, your ma had years to learn how to cook. You're just getting started. Besides," he added, taking another bite of the concrete hard biscuit, "they're not that bad once you get used to them." Emma giggled through her tears. "You're lying. They're terrible." "All right, they're pretty awful," Tom admitted with a grin, "but we'll practice. Cookie can teach you, and by spring you'll be cooking better than anyone in the territory." That evening, as Emma helped Tom with the evening chores, she asked the question he'd been expecting for days. "Mr. Brennan, what's going to happen to me if my family doesn't come back?" Tom paused in his brushing of Thunder's coat. It was a fair question, and Emma deserved an honest answer. "Well, there are several possibilities. We could try to find relatives back east who might take you in, or there might be a family in one of the towns who'd be willing to adopt you." Emma was quiet for a long moment. "What if I wanted to stay here?" The question caught Tom off guard. "Emma, this is a working ranch. It's no place for a young girl to grow up. You need schooling, other children to play with, a woman's influence." "But you said I was helpful," Emma protested, "and I like it here. Everyone's nice to me, and I'm learning things. Couldn't I just stay?" Tom found himself in unfamiliar emotional territory. Part of him, a larger part than he wanted to admit, was drawn to the idea of Emma staying permanently. The ranch house felt more alive with her presence, and he'd discovered an unexpected talent for explaining things to her curious mind. But his practical side knew that a frontier ranch was no place to raise a young girl alone. "Now, let's not worry about that right now," Tom said finally. "Winter's coming, and you'll be staying here at least until spring anyway. That gives us plenty of time to figure things out." Emma seemed satisfied with this answer, but Tom noticed she began throwing herself into ranch life with even more determination, as if trying to prove her worth. 2 weeks after Emma's arrival, the first real test of their new arrangement came in the form of a late-season cattle drive. Tom had contracted to deliver 50 head to a buyer in the next county, and the work required most of his hands to be away from the ranch for 3 days. "Cookie and old Pete will stay here with you," Tom explained to Emma as he prepared to leave. "You mind what Cookie tells you, and don't go wandering off the property." Emma nodded solemnly. "I'll be good, and I'll take care of Thunder for you while you're gone." As Tom's group disappeared over the hill, driving the cattle ahead of them, Emma felt a familiar pang of abandonment, but this time was different. Tom had promised to come back, had given her specific instructions, and had left trusted men to watch over her. This wasn't the same as being accidentally left behind. Still, when 3 days stretched to 4 because of a river crossing that took longer than expected, Emma began to worry. She spent hours on the front porch, scanning the horizon for any sign of returning riders. On the 4th evening, just as the sun was setting, Emma spotted the familiar figure of Tom on Thunder, cresting the ridge. Relief flooded through her so powerfully that her knees went weak. Tom saw her waiting on the porch and urged Thunder into a gallop. As he dismounted, Emma ran to him and threw her arms around his waist, surprising them both with the intensity of her greeting. "I was scared you weren't coming back," she whispered into his coat. Tom felt something shift in his chest as he held the small girl who'd somehow become so important to him. "I told you I'd come back," he said gently. "I always keep my promises." "I know," Emma said, stepping back and wiping her eyes with embarrassment. I missed you. I missed you too, little one, Tom admitted, and realized it was true. The cattle drive had gone smoothly, but something had felt incomplete without Emma's chatter during evening chores and her curious questions about everything around the ranch. That night, as they sat by the fire and Emma told him everything that had happened during his absence, Cookie's story about fighting Indians, Pete's demonstration of rope tricks, the new calf that had been born, Tom found himself thinking seriously about Emma's question. What if she did stay? What if, instead of looking for someone else to take care of her, he simply kept her here where she was clearly thriving? The idea should have terrified him, but instead, it felt strangely right. Looking at Emma as she laughed at one of Cookie's tall tales, her face glowing in the firelight, Tom began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, his carefully planned solitary life wasn't as perfect as he'd always thought. Outside, the first hard frost of the season painted the windows with delicate ice crystals, and Tom realized that winter, and all the long evenings it would bring, was going to give him plenty of time to figure out what he really wanted for both their futures. November brought the first serious snowfall to the Wyoming Territory, and with it, a series of challenges that would test both Tom and Emma in ways neither expected. The storm arrived without warning on a Tuesday morning, transforming the ranch from autumn brown to winter white in a matter of hours. Emma pressed her nose against the kitchen window, watching the snow fall in thick, heavy flakes. "I've never seen so much snow," she breathed, her breath fogging the glass. Tom looked up from the ranch ledgers he'd been working on. "This is just the beginning. Up here in the mountains, we can get snowed in for weeks at a time." The storm continued for 3 days, dumping nearly 2 feet of snow across the ranch. By the second day, the bunkhouse was running low on firewood, and several of the hands were showing signs of cabin fever. Tom made the decision to move everyone into the main house until the weather cleared. "I hope you don't mind company," Tom told Emma, as Cookie and the ranch hands trooped into the large front room, stomping snow from their boots. Emma's face lit up. "I love company. Can I help Cookie make dinner for everyone?" What followed was a crash course in large-scale cooking that left the kitchen looking like a battlefield, but resulted in the best meal the ranch hands had eaten in months. Emma's natural organizing ability, combined with Cookie's experience, produced platters of roast beef, mashed potatoes, and surprisingly edible biscuits. "Miss Emma," said Jake Martinez, one of the younger cowboys, "you're gonna make someone a fine wife someday." Emma blushed furiously, but Tom noticed she stood a little straighter with pride. On the third night of the storm, as the wind howled around the house like a living thing, Emma woke Tom with urgent shaking. "Mr. Brennan, something's wrong with Thunder." Tom bolted upright, instantly alert. "What do you mean?" "I heard him crying out in the barn. It doesn't sound normal." Tom quickly dressed and followed Emma through the connecting passage to the barn, grateful that the previous owner had built the structures close together. Inside, they found Thunder lying on his side in his stall, clearly in distress. "Colic," Tom diagnosed grimly, kneeling beside his beloved stallion. "Must have gotten into some bad hay or eaten too fast when the weather turned." Emma watched anxiously as Tom began the difficult process of treating the horse. Colic could be fatal if not handled properly, and Thunder was more than just livestock to Tom. He was a trusted companion who had carried him safely through countless dangers. "What can I do to help?" Emma asked. "Hold the lantern steady and talk to him," Tom said. "Keep him calm while I work." For the next 6 hours, Tom and Emma worked together to save Thunder's life. Emma proved to have a natural way with the distressed animal, her gentle voice and careful touch helping to keep him calm during the worst of his pain. When Tom needed to administer medicine, Emma held Thunder's head. When the horse needed to be encouraged to walk, Emma led him carefully around the barn. As dawn broke gray and cold over the snow-covered ranch, Thunder finally showed signs of improvement. His breathing became more regular, and he was able to stand and drink water. "He's going to be all right," Tom said, relief evident in his voice. Emma threw her arms around Thunder's neck. "I was so scared we were going to lose him." Tom looked at Emma, hair tangled from the long night, dress rumpled, but with a smile of pure joy on her face, and felt something click into place in his chest. "Emma," he said quietly, You did real good tonight. Thunder's alive because you heard him and woke me up. We saved him together," Emma corrected. "That's what families do, right? They take care of each other." The word families hung in the air between them. Tom had been thinking it for weeks but hadn't dared to say it out loud. Now, looking at this remarkable girl who had seamlessly woven herself into the fabric of his life, he realized he didn't want to imagine the ranch without her. "Emma," Tom said carefully, "what if your family doesn't come back? What if we never hear from them again?" Emma was quiet for a long moment, stroking Thunder's neck. "I've been thinking about that," she said finally. "At first I thought I'd die if they didn't come back, but now I think maybe this is where I'm supposed to be." "What do you mean?" Emma turned to face him, her dark eyes serious. "If I'd never gotten lost, I never would have met you. And Thunder might have died tonight because nobody would have heard him. Maybe some things happen for a reason." Tom felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling. This child, this wise, brave, wonderful child, was offering to stay with him, to become the family he'd never thought he wanted. "Emma, if you stayed here permanently, there'd be conditions. You'd need proper schooling, and I'd have to teach you things a mother usually teaches a daughter. It wouldn't be easy." "I'm not afraid of hard work," Emma said immediately. And I learn fast. You've seen that. There's something else," Tom said, his voice rough with emotion. "If you stay, if we become a real family, I'd want to adopt you legal-like, make it official. Would you want that?" Emma's answer came without hesitation. "Yes, more than anything." Tom pulled Emma into a hug, feeling years of loneliness dissolve in the warmth of her embrace. "Then that's what we'll do. Come spring, we'll go into town and make it legal. You'll be Emma Brennan, and this will be your home for as long as you want it." Emma pulled back to look at his face. "Forever, forever," Tom promised. As they walked back to the house through the snow, Emma carrying the lantern and Tom's arm around her shoulders, neither of them noticed the figure watching from the ridge above the ranch. A lone rider sat motionless on his horse, studying the scene below through a spyglass. William Clark had been searching for his daughter for 6 weeks, following every trail and checking every settlement between Colorado and Wyoming. Yesterday, a trapper had mentioned seeing a young girl at a ranch in this valley, a girl who matched Emma's description. Now, watching his daughter walk arm in arm with a strange man toward a house that clearly wasn't her home, Bill Clark felt a complex mixture of relief and anger. Relief that Emma was alive and apparently well cared for. Anger that this stranger had his daughter and seemed to have made no effort to find her family. As Bill watched, Emma looked up at the man beside her with obvious affection, laughing at something he said. The easy familiarity between them was unmistakable. This wasn't a temporary arrangement. His daughter had found a new family. Bill Clark turned his horse away from the ridge and rode back toward the main trail, his mind churning with difficult decisions. He had found his daughter, but getting her back might not be as simple as he'd expected. And after 6 weeks of assuming she was dead, the shock of seeing her alive and apparently happy was almost more than he could process. In the ranch house below, Tom and Emma settled by the fire to warm up, both unaware that their newfound happiness was about to face its greatest test. The end.